Raiden is the protector of Earthrealm, and perhaps the most recognizable character in the series, thanks to his trademark hat. I doubt that even one Mortal Kombat fan is unaware of who Raiden is, and yet despite his fame and godly status, Raiden is all over the place in these games. Sometimes he does nothing, other times he saves the day, or maybe he destroys everything. And I'm not joking. Raiden has destroyed the realms on purpose and sometimes on accident. He's a helicopter parent that takes his job very seriously, which sometimes causes him to ruin everything, like most helicopter parents often do. Or sometimes he just tells everyone else what to do. In fact, he does that fairly often. Today's video will rank Raiden in every Mortal Kombat game based on his role in the story. If you enjoyed this video and want the series to continue, please leave a like down below and post a comment too. Without any further ado, let's begin. Starting off with Mythologies Sub-Zero, because canonically that's the first time Raiden does something. For anyone watching who's not aware, this game does take place before the first Mortal Kombat game. However, with that said, Raiden doesn't do very much of note. In fact, he makes Bi-Han do everything for him, otherwise known as the first Sub-Zero. And it's not because Raiden's lazy, but rather his powers don't work in the Netherrealm, and as a result, he needs somebody else to do it, and Sub-Zero made for the perfect errand boy. Which means this Raiden is going in the barking orders tier, since he only tells others what to do. Alright, on to the first Mortal Kombat game, and in the original story, Raiden is very different than the retcon version we all know and love. Originally, in this game, Raiden simply enters the tournament to test his skills, and he is very unimpressed by the other fighters, including Goro and Shang Tsung. To quote his ending directly, Raiden got bored. So after winning, he invites the other gods to compete instead, and the battle is so intense that Earthrealm gets destroyed. Yep, that's the original story of Raiden. Have a nice day. No, literally, have a nice day. That's in the original victory screen. However, the Raiden we all know today is very different, and the story was retconned to match his new personality that's actually canon. So in the new story, Raiden assembles Earthrealm warriors to fight with him and defeat Shang Tsung. And since you can play as Raiden in this game, one could argue that he entered the tournament too. However, later games imply that Raiden is not allowed to compete in the Mortal Kombat tournaments. Plus, I feel like if Raiden did enter the tournament, he would have won, right? Because he's the most powerful? So in my honest opinion, given all the evidence we have, I don't think Raiden competed in the first tournament. He was just giving orders. Next up is Mortal Kombat 2. Another tournament happens, and Raiden, once again, enlists warriors to help fight. So overall, the story is very similar to the previous game. However, the game itself states that Raiden actually wins this tournament himself, and afterwards he goes to Outworld and destroys the gates that lead to Earthrealm, which in theory would prevent any possible invasions from happening in the future. However, the writers would retcon this and have Liu Kang win the tournament instead. Yeah, they do that a lot, so buckle in and get ready for disappointment. Raiden's actually missing in Mortal Kombat 3 and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, so onward to Mortal Kombat Trilogy. And here is where things get interesting. Raiden is unable to get help from the Elder Gods and actually becomes mortal, so he can actually die in this game. However, he chooses to help Earthrealm anyway because he's a real one like that. Powers or not, Raiden has your back because he's a real friend. Raiden does his part in fighting off the invasions, but Liu Kang is the one who ultimately defeats Shao Kahn. Again. For whatever reason, Midway loves making Liu Kang the winner in every single game. But then again, most fighting games do that, including Street Fighter. It's always Ryu for whatever reason. Anyways, overall, I would argue that Raiden had a pretty big impact on Mortal Kombat Trilogy. So next up is Mortal Kombat 4, when Raiden helps save the day once again, and the Elder Gods make him one of them. That's right, Raiden becomes an Elder God in this game, which at the time was the highest status you could possibly be. There was nothing above the Elder Gods, until Mortal Kombat 11 when they invented the Titans and then got rid of them in Mortal Kombat 1 for whatever reason. Anyways, overall, I would argue that Raiden was pretty active in Mortal Kombat 4, but did not play a huge role, which means it's time for Deadly Alliance, possibly the darkest game in the Mortal Kombat series. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi have joined forces to kill Liu Kang and Shao Kahn. So Raiden, once again, gathers all the powerful warriors he can think of to fend off this new threat and defeat the Deadly Alliance. However, at first, Raiden is not allowed to take part himself because he's an Elder God, so guess what? Raiden actually renounces his Elder God status to join the other Earthrealmers in this fight, which is really noble and badass, but he dies. Yeah, Raiden loses to the Deadly Alliance. It's really embarrassing. However, it's worth noting that everybody else lost to the Deadly Alliance too, too, except for Sub-Zero because he arrived late and missed the whole thing. Overall, I would say that Raiden is pretty active in this game, however he did also die. In fact, we see his death at the start of Deception, which is the next game. Raiden is seen fighting the Deadly Alliance and is doing a pretty good job, but the plot defeats him because the writers decided he would lose here. I say that because personally, I think Raiden would win this fight. He's a god for Pete's sake, and also it's not the tournament, which means he keeps his godly status, so technically Raiden should not even be mortal here. So once again, I don't understand how Raiden loses this fight, but the writers said so. He has no plot armor, so Raiden does fall here. However, he's not actually dead and gets back up to help the Deadly Alliance fight Onaga, who just entered the room. And you would think that Shang Tsung, Quan Chi, and Raiden are strong enough to defeat the Dragon King. However, he's armed with most of the Kamidogu, which makes him nearly invincible. So in a last-ditch effort, Raiden blows himself up along with the Deadly Alliance in the hopes of killing Onaga, but he fails because, again, the Kamidogu. And all of this happens in the intro. During the gameplay itself, Raiden shows back up because he's back from the dead. However, he's been corrupted, and you can tell by the evil glowing eyes. Raiden finds out that Shujinko is the one responsible for freeing Onaga and tries to actually kill him. However, thankfully Shujinko does manage to survive. I don't think Raiden knows that. So he goes off to dig up Liu Kang's grave. That's right, straight up digs up the grave of Liu Kang and revives his body. However, there's no soul to go into the body. In other words, Liu Kang is a zombie husk with a body that knows really good martial arts. So Raiden uses him as an extension of his wrath to attack and kill anybody who might pose a threat to Earthrealm. Yeah, despite being corrupted, Raiden still wants to protect Earthrealm. He's just going about it in a way more sinister way. Next up, let's talk about Armageddon, even though Shaolin Monks takes place sooner because Armageddon's plot directly comes after Deception's plot. In this game, Raiden is still very much a bad guy and teams up with Shao Kahn in exchange for Earth's protection. That's right, in this game, Raiden is helping Shao Kahn conquer other realms as long as he leaves Earthrealm alone. That's the deal they made. And after learning that Taven is walking around, Shao Kahn is like, yo Raiden, defeat him, kill him so I can have his soul and powers for myself. Yeah, for anyone not aware, Shao Kahn knows soul magic. In fact, he's the one that taught Shang Tsung how to do soul magic. So yeah, he sends Raiden to defeat Taven, but thanks to plot armor, Taven wins. And soon afterwards, the Battle of Armageddon takes place and we see Raiden fighting on the side of light because he still wants to save Earthrealm despite being more sinister in this game. In other words, no matter how hard Raiden falls, he's still always fighting for the good guys. Alright, quickly let's talk about Shaolin Monks because in this game, Raiden is barking orders once again. He's always telling Liu Kang and Kung Lao what to do for basically the whole game and never does anything himself really. Which means it's time for Mortal Kombat vs DC. In this game, Raiden meets with a lot of characters, loses a fight against Batman, which is hilarious, and eventually he takes part in the final battle and helps win the day. So overall, I would say Raiden's active and possibly has a big impact on the story because he meets with so many characters. Oh yeah, and Raiden is the one who causes the dimensions to merge in the first place, unintentionally, but still, Raiden is the main reason that DC characters show up in this story, which means yeah, he plays a very big role in this story. Huge impact. Alright, time for Mortal Kombat 9. Huge impact. I think everybody watching knows this. Raiden plays a very big impact in this story. In fact, he's the plot point itself. In this game, Raiden is the MacGuffin, alright? Future Raiden tells past Raiden what to do, and past Raiden is making changes that actively affect the story. In fact, you could argue that Raiden is the main character of this game because the plot literally centers around what he chooses to do. Now with that said, he's not always doing the right thing, but still, I would argue that Raiden is the main character of Mortal Kombat 9, and I don't think many fans would disagree. So onward to Mortal Kombat X, and this game is tricky because Raiden does not show up all the time. However, when he does appear on screen, he does some pretty big stuff, whether it's in the past or in the present. For example, Raiden manages to defeat every single Revenant, but is stopped short by Shinnok, and the Revenants get back up, so maybe his impact isn't huge despite all the cool feats he accomplishes. So I guess Raiden is going in the active tier for this one, because he never really succeeds in his main goal, but does help out a lot. Alright, time for Mortal Kombat 11. Huge impact. I don't think anybody would argue this. Both Dark Raiden and Good Raiden are doing tons of stuff in Mortal Kombat 11. Dark Raiden fights off an entire army by himself and leads the charge against the Netherrealm and succeeds. They defeat the Netherrealm in like chapter 1. Then afterwards it's all about Good Raiden, otherwise known as Regular Raiden, who does a really good job saving a lot of the main characters, and then at the end he merges with Liu Kang to save the day. So in other words, Liu Kang and Raiden combine to become Super Liu Kang and and save the day. However, without Raiden, Liu Kang would have stayed trapped by Kronika. So in my opinion, it's Raiden who saved the day using Liu Kang as a vessel, because Liu Kang was screwed without him. Which means now finally it's time for Mortal Kombat 1, where Raiden looks completely different and behaves completely different, and also does not have lightning powers without this special amulet, which to this day really bothers me. I don't get why NetherRealm took away his lightning powers. Liu Kang's always had fire powers despite being a human, and Johnny Cage has green energy despite being a human, so why can't Raiden have lightning even though he's a human? I really think it was a bad decision for NetherRealm to take away his lightning powers, but whatever. For the first half of this game, Raiden plays a big part. He's the champion of Earthrealm and competes in a tournament that is like Mortal Kombat, but it's never called the Mortal Kombat tournament, and also nobody ever dies and the realms don't hang in the balance. For this tournament in particular, the Elder Gods are not in control or mandating it, so it's not technically a Mortal Kombat tournament, but it is a tournament between Outworld and Earthrealm, where Raiden is the champion and saves the day. However, that's the first half of the game. For the entire second half, Raiden does almost nothing, and I'm not joking, Raiden does next to nothing later on. And the same goes for the DLC expansion. He helps thwart the invasion from Bihan, but that's about it. So overall, I would say that Raiden is active, because I can't put him in the huge impact tier when he's gone for most of the story. Alright everyone, there you have it, and as you can see, Raiden is all over the place in these games. Sometimes he's the main character who's saving the day, other times he's active, sometimes he's barking orders and does almost nothing, and other times he destroys the world. Yeah, it's honestly crazy how much Raiden's influence fluctuates between games. You never quite know what his role's gonna be. But no matter what the case may be, I love Raiden. He's one of my favorite characters in Mortal Kombat, and I would argue he's a top 5 character to be sure. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like. It helps the channel out a ton. And then finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdog.